Sports stars in America have brought major US leagues to a halt by refusing to play in protests against the police shooting of Jacob Blake in Wisconsin. These are players in the women's basketball team, the Washington Mystics, with 7 fake bullet holes on the back of their T-shirts, matching the number of times Mr. Blake was shot. The Women's National Basketball Association postponed all 3 matches which were scheduled for Wednesday. The men's NBA says 3 games due to be played later on Thursday will be postponed, on top of the 3 postponed games on Wednesday after the Milwaukee Bucks refused to leave their locker room. It's been reported that NBA players have now voted to resume the playoffs rather than abandoning the season altogether. In baseball, 3 major league games were called off after teams decided not to play. And tennis player Naomi Osaka pulled out of her semi-final at the Western and Southern Open in New York, saying that there are much more important matters at hand that need immediate attention. The US Tennis Association then announced it was pausing play at the event, adding that tennis is collectively taking a stance against racial inequality and social injustice. Well, in the last hour, President Trump has given his view on the NBA protests.
I don't know much about the NBA protest. I know their ratings have been very bad because I think people are a little tired of the NBA, frankly. But I don't know too much about the protest. But I know their ratings have been very bad, and that's unfortunate. They've become like a political organization, and that's not a good thing. I don't think that's a good thing for sports or for the country.
However, former President Barack Obama has showed his support for the boycott, saying he commends the players for standing up for what they believe in and coaches like Doc Rivers for setting an example. Here's what Doc Rivers, the head basketball coach for the LA Clippers, had to say.
All you do is keep hearing about fear. It's amazing to me why we keep loving this country and this country does not love us back. And it's really so sad. Like, I should just be a coach. And it's so often reminded of my color. You know, it's just really sad. We got to do better.
Well, let's turn to the cause of those emotional words and that action in the sporting world, because Jacob Blake was shot 7 times by police in the city of Kenosha on Sunday as he opened the door to his car while his young children were sat in the back seat. Since then, there have been nightly protests in the city. Then, on Tuesday night, 2 people were shot and killed. A 17-year-old named as Kyle Rittenhouse has been charged in connection with the deaths. David Willis reports.
Into a vacuum created by daily protests and an initially overstretched police force has come armed vigilantes, one of whom was caught on camera before Tuesday night's violence. Reports suggest the individual interviewed, 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse, later put his weapon to use. This mobile phone footage appears to capture the moment someone fires on protesters and later zooms in on an individual lying motionless on the ground. Another video appears to show a similar incident. Again, a protester is gunned down. 2 people were killed. A third, seen here, was injured. Someone who appeared to be armed was later seen walking with his hands up towards the police. A 17-year-old has since been charged with first-degree murder.
The right-wing news outlet Fox News has been critical of the protests in Kenosha. Then on Wednesday night, one of their hosts, Tucker Carlson, said this.
So are we really surprised that looting and arson accelerated to murder? How shocked are we that 17-year-olds with rifles decided they had to maintain order when no one else would?
Well, Tucker Carlson's comments led to calls for him to be fired and for advertisers to cut their ties with his program. But one person who stepped up to defend him was the president's son, Donald Trump Jr. The left-wing media is willfully twisting Tucker Carlson's words to smear him. He never endorsed vigilante justice. Yesterday, his father, President Trump, tweeted, "Today I'll be sending federal law enforcement and the National Guard to Kenosha," ending with a familiar phrase, law and order. In the last hour, President Trump has warned that the National Guard force in Wisconsin could be made much larger if needed. And this is what his Democratic rival in the November presidential election, Joe Biden, had to say a little earlier.
Protesting brutality is a right and absolutely necessary, but burning down communities is not protest, it's needless violence.
Well, here's Anthony Zerka in Washington on how Kenosha has impacted the presidential campaign.
Obviously, the unrest in a number of American cities has been a theme in the Republican National Convention, although what they've been focusing on is not the root causes of this police shooting. They've been talking about how law and order is necessary and a need to stop these, what they characterize as violent protests. So I think you're seeing this as part of a Republican strategy to make Americans concerned about what's going on and to say that Joe Biden, the Democrat, wouldn't be able to properly confront it and only Donald Trump would be able to address it.
Anthony, talk us through the events in the sporting world. How unprecedented is it for these matches to be called off and players making the decisions themselves?
It's remarkable. We haven't seen anything like what happened with the National Basketball Association yesterday, where it was players deciding to stage this boycott, a boycott that spread throughout the league. And the National Basketball League was forced to kind of play catch up and get out ahead of it and cancel all of the basketball games, lest they be seen as running against the players. And then it spread not just to men's basketball, women's professional basketball, several Major League Baseball games were postponed, and Major League Soccer games as well. So I think it shows how fraught a political moment this is, where professional athletes try to exercise the power that they do have to shift attention off of sports and back on to what's going on in these cities in the United States.
Yeah, Anthony, we're just seeing a picture there as you were speaking of Colin Kaepernick taking a knee in that American football game. And of course, Donald Trump's response at the time was less than complimentary about that action. How much has the climate changed since then?
I think, the public support for Black Lives Matters across the country and the movement that these athletes are showing their support for by kneeling for the national anthem, that has gone up considerably since the unrest began in these cities. So I think Donald Trump, because he's not speaking out so vociferously on this, definitely senses that the political ground beneath his feet are changing. You see a lot of talk about honoring the flag, honoring American soldiers, but not the kind of attacks on athletes that you saw last year, where Donald Trump really was going after Colin Kaepernick, turning that into a real political issue around the 2018 midterm elections as well.